Hello and welcome to the unseen question. Religious indoctrination doesn't usually look like brainwashing, at least not in the way people imagine it. There's no swinging pendulum, no dark cellar with whispering voices, no locked doors. Most of the time, it looks ordinary, comfortable even. It's in bedtime stories. It's in songs. It's in the way children are taught what questions not to ask, and which answers are off limits. What makes indoctrination different from education isn't just the content, it's the method. Education, at its core, encourages inquiry. It tolerates uncertainty. Indoctrination, by contrast, discourages questioning from the beginning. The answers come first, and the questions are tailored to fit them later, if they're allowed at all. From a young age, children in many religious environments are taught what to believe before they even understand what belief is. They're told about heaven and hell before they learn about metaphor or myth or metaphorical myth. The stakes are made clear: eternal reward or eternal punishment. And that message gets framed as love. Fear and love get blurred until it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. If you love God, you obey Him. If you don't obey, you're disappointing not just your parents, but an all-seeing, all-knowing presence. That kind of emotional setup creates deep, reflexive loyalty, not because it makes sense, but because questioning it feels like betrayal. And this is where it gets subtle. Most religious indoctrination isn't about shouting or punishing. It's about repetition, familiarity, embedding ideas so early and so often that they become the mental wallpaper of a child's world. You don't notice wallpaper. You just live inside it. This approach uses what psychologists call the mere exposure effect. The more you hear something, the more true or important it starts to feel, even if it isn't. When kids hear religious claims constantly, from authority figures they trust and love, they rarely see those ideas as options. They see them as facts. The repetition isn't just in sermons or prayers. It's in family routines, holidays, bedtime rituals, cultural cues. The idea isn't just to introduce belief, it's to make belief feel natural, even inevitable. So by the time someone is old enough to question it, they're not questioning a story. They're questioning their identity, their community, their parents, their own sense of right and wrong. Many adults who leave religion later in life describe the experience as undoing programming, rather than changing an opinion. And that distinction matters. Because when beliefs are wrapped up in your sense of self, challenging them can feel like self-destruction. That's one reason so many religions emphasize early conversion. The Jesuits famously said, "Give me the child for the first 7 years, and I will give you the man." They understood something that modern psychologists also confirm: the human brain is most impressionable and least skeptical in childhood. Children are literal thinkers. They're imaginative, but not yet capable of deep abstraction or critical reasoning. So when they're told about supernatural events, talking animals, magic gardens, virgin births, they accept them just as they would accept Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. But unlike Santa, religious beliefs are often shielded from expiration. The fantasy never gets openly reclassified. Instead, it gets moralized. You're not supposed to outgrow God. That would be seen not as maturity, but rebellion. Now, none of this means that every religious person is unintelligent or manipulative. That would be a lazy and inaccurate claim. In fact, indoctrination works best not on the uninformed, but on those who want to do the right thing, people who care deeply about their family, community, and moral obligations. And that's part of what makes these tactics so durable. The idea isn't just to shape belief. It's to shape how belief feels. Religious systems create emotional anchors that make dissent uncomfortable, not just intellectually, but socially, emotionally, and even physically. Take prayer, for example. In many traditions, prayer is introduced early, often before a child can even write a sentence. It becomes a soothing ritual, a way to feel safe, to feel connected. Over time, that emotional bond with prayer gets transferred to the belief system itself. So if the belief comes under scrutiny later, it's not just an idea being questioned, it's a sense of comfort, peace, security. This is a powerful tool to make belief feel good and doubt feel bad. In cognitive science, there's a concept called motivated reasoning. It's when our emotions steer our thoughts instead of the other way around. We want something to be true because it comforts us or connects us to others, so we unconsciously ignore or downplay anything that challenges it. Religion taps into this tendency constantly. The heart of the belief is to defend with evidence, the more it's bolstered by emotional reinforcement. When people say things like, "I just feel God's presence," or "I know in my heart it's true," they're not lying. They're describing real emotional experiences. But those experiences don't confirm the truth of the belief, they confirm the power of the environment that nurtured it. This is also why many religious institutions resist open-ended questioning. Not because they're inherently evil or secretive, but because the system isn't built to withstand it. The questions that challenge core beliefs are often seen not as curiosity, but as sin. And when questioning gets moralized, when asking becomes a sign of spiritual weakness, people start to self-censor. They edit their own thoughts before they even speak them. They internalize the idea that doubt is dangerous. This doesn't just apply to religious beliefs. It can show up in politics, ideology, or even family dynamics. But in religious contexts, it's especially potent because the authority being deferred to isn't just human, it's supposedly divine. So disobedience isn't just a mistake, it's cosmic treason. And when the stakes are framed as eternal, heaven, hell, salvation, damnation, it creates an emotional pressure that's hard to overstate. You're not just wrong, you're risking everything. This kind of framing is incredibly effective, especially on children and teenagers who are still forming their moral compass. Because when you tie belief to fear and guilt, you don't need strong arguments. You just need a strong incentive not to look too closely. But let's be clear, indoctrination doesn't require cruelty. In fact, it often looks like love. Parents teach their kids what they believe is true. They pass on rituals, stories, values. That's normal. But the line gets crossed when the system punishes dissent and discourages independent thought. Think about how often religious communities isolate themselves, socially, intellectually, even geographically. This isn't just about preserving culture. It's about protecting belief from competition. You limit exposure to alternate views. You label outsiders as wrong, misguided, or evil. You encourage loyalty not through reason, but through boundaries. In psychology, this is known as information control. It's one of the core components of thought reform, identified decades ago by researchers studying cults and authoritarian groups. The principle is simple: control the input and you influence the output. And religious indoctrination often does exactly that. Not always with malice, but with a clear goal: protect the belief system from scrutiny. In many cases, the goal isn't even to convert the world. It's to insulate the group, keep the community strong, prevent doubts from spreading. That's why many religions don't encourage deep engagement with opposing ideas. You're allowed to witness to outsiders, but you're rarely encouraged to truly listen to them. That would require too much cognitive friction, and friction leads to cracks. Now, it's worth pointing out there's a huge difference between being religious and being indoctrinated. Many people hold religious beliefs without fear or suppression. They're open to discussion. They accept doubt. But indoctrination, by definition, doesn't allow that openness. It trades complexity for certainty, curiosity for conformity. One of the strongest markers of indoctrination is when people are taught not just what to believe, but how to respond to disbelief. That includes preloaded argument, emotional stories, and especially the idea that doubt is a test, trap, a spiritual attack, anything but a valid response to a weak claim. This framing hijacks the process of reasoning. Instead of saying, "Maybe this doesn't make sense," the believer is trained to say, "I must not be praying hard enough," or "God is testing me." The fault is never with the belief. It's always with the believer. That kind of logic isn't just flawed, it's circular. And that's the point. Circular reasoning isn't a bug in indoctrination, it's a feature. It creates a belief structure that can't be escaped from the inside. Every question points back to the same answer. This is why many people who leave religion don't do so because of a single argument or event. It's a slow unraveling, a realization that the framework itself doesn't allow for real doubt, that the belief system isn't built on evidence, but on insulation. And when that insulation wears thin, through education, exposure, or just honest reflection, the cracks begin to show. What once felt like absolute truth starts to feel like inherited narrative. At that point, many people experience what researchers call cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort of holding conflicting ideas. For example, I believe God is loving, but the texts I've been taught say otherwise. Or, I'm told to value truth, but only if it confirms my faith. That tension doesn't go away easily. It has to be resolved. And in many cases, that means walking away. But leaving religion isn't easy, not just because of internal beliefs, but because of external costs. Family, community, identity, all those can be tied up in a single belief system. Letting go can feel like social suicide, which is why indoctrination often works through reinforcement loops. The community you grow up in is also the one that praises your belief and subtly punishes your doubt, not necessarily with cruelty, but with distance, disappointment, silence. In many tight-knit religious communities, apostasy is seen not just as a choice, but as a failure, a moral collapse. You didn't just change your mind, you turned your back. That framing makes it even harder for people to leave. Even when they no longer believe, they may still pretend. They perform faith to preserve relationships. This isn't just anecdotal. Studies have shown that many non-believers remain closeted, especially in conservative cultures, because the social cost of honesty is too high. It's not that they're confused. It's that they're trapped. And when someone does leave, they often face a kind of moral whiplash. The very system that claimed to offer love and truth now condemns them as lost, broken, or dangerous. That reversal reveals something important. The love was never entirely unconditional. It came with terms. But the power of indoctrination isn't just in childhood. It's in how beliefs get reinforced over time, through institutions, media, traditions. Even education systems in some countries are shaped around religious narratives. Textbooks omit uncomfortable facts. History is whitewashed. Science is framed as secondary to scripture. And once those biases are in place, they shape how people think, what they value, what they consider normal. Religion becomes not just a belief, but the lens through which all beliefs are judged. This is why real critical thinking is often seen as dangerous. Not because it leads to immorality, but because it leads to independence. And independent thinkers don't always stay in line. Now, some argue that religion offers moral guidance, that it gives people purpose, that it builds community. And in some cases, that's true. But none of those benefits require belief in the supernatural. You can have ethics without dogma, purpose without mythology, belonging without conformity. What indoctrination does is tell people they can't. That without the belief system, they're empty, hopeless, damn. But here's the truth, questioning isn't a sin. It's a sign of intelligence. Doubt isn't weakness, it's honesty. And the world doesn't fall apart when you stop believing. In fact, for many people, that's when it finally starts to make sense. Beliefs should be earned, not inherited. They should be tested, not protected. And the only ideas worth holding on to are the ones that survive scrutiny. Because truth doesn't need to be shielded. It needs to be discovered, again and again, by people free to think for themselves. And that's the difference between teaching and indoctrinating.